The universe had rules. Not bureaucratic regulations, not physics, not causality, but deeper, older laws. Things carved into the quantum marrow of existence by forces that didn't care whether a species walked on legs or hovered on antimatter tides. The space god didn't speak these laws. It was them. And the Yalzur broke one. They weren't fools, the Yalzur. For 3 galactic eons, they'd reigned as one of the oldest civilizations in the Orion Arm. Their hive-oracle minds mapped dark matter pathways and bred stars like pets. They knew what not to touch. Knew not to mine near that system. Not to scan that non-existent coordinate. Not to name certain gravitational signatures. And yet, curiosity bred audacity. They named it. They called it the hollow beacon, the thing that pulsed in impossible neutrino bursts across their deep field sensors. They sent a probe, then a vessel. Then 50 more. The first ships returned with nothing. No data. Not even recordings. Just crews wide-eyed and shaking. Some were brain-dead, neurons burned clean. Others screamed without stop until their throats bled. So the Yalzur did what ancient empires do when humbled. They tried to bury it. But the stars had already shifted. Something was watching. A month after the last expedition, suns began to blink out, gone, not supernovaed. Erased. The Yalzur called it a cosmic cascade failure. Then they watched entire star systems get rewritten, replaced by voids with impossible geometry, lightless shapes visible only when you weren't looking directly at them. A silent judgment. And then the message came. The signal spiked through 27 interstellar languages at once, as if it couldn't decide how to address the guilty. The message had no sender and no location. It simply was. You have trespassed. You are known. The debt is incalculable. Panic doesn't describe what swept the galactic sectors then. The Yalzur begged. The neighboring Trilens syndicates fled their quadrants entirely. Even the Terran Confederacy, arrogant upstarts from Sol, fell silent. Except one. Earth had always had a different relationship with fear. While the Council of Spheres debated appeasement rituals and entropy offerings, humans sent a reply. For words. What's your god mad about? That's how she got the job. Cassidy Reese. Human. Ex-mercenary, ex-prisoner, current galactic nuisance. The Yalzur had initially scoffed. She was unranked in the galactic hierarchy. No psychic imprint. No quantum clairvoyance. Not even an evolved memory core. Just a short woman in a vacuum-worn flight suit with a smirk that didn't quit. But she didn't flinch when they told her the god's judgment had already erased 9 worlds. She just sipped her drink, synth whiskey probably illegal, and said, well, sounds like someone poked Cthulhu and now wants therapy. Lucky for you, I do both exorcisms and war crimes. The council tried to stop it. Called it suicide. The Yalzur called it their last hope. And the god? It said nothing. Not until she left orbit. Cassidy's ship wasn't much. Dead Reckoner, an old Terran long-range shuttle repurposed as a freelance gunboat. She'd stripped the cryopods to fit a sarcasm module and replaced the hull with something she called anti-smug plating. Which was to say rusted metal with a laser-proof attitude. She didn't bring a crew. Didn't need one. Just her, a beat-up AI named Bastard, and the coordinates the Yalzur reluctantly provided, coordinates no one was supposed to have. As she slipped into FTL, her screens flickered. What? Then again. Cass, Bastard said, voice slow and gravelly, I don't like this. You never like anything. No, but I really don't like this. The stars around them stopped stretching. Not faded, stopped. As if even faster-than-light travel refused to function near the hollow beacon. Cassidy leaned forward. That's new. Nothing should be here. Not even space. Yet something was. A station. No, a structure? No, a wound. Floating in reality like a scar across spacetime. It pulsed, not with light but with absence. Shapes formed and unformed on its surface. Cuneiform geometries that rearranged themselves with each heartbeat. And it was angry. Cassidy exhaled. Well, she said, powering up the landing thrusters, let's go meet God. She expected resistance. She got silence. No guardians. No traps. Just a seamless descent onto the entity's surface, where the material felt like both ice and magma, metal and bone. Cassidy stepped off the ramp. No sound. No wind. No time? She moved. The structure responded. And then she saw it. A figure. Humanoid. Featureless. Composed of fractal shapes that refused to settle on one form. It wasn't standing. It was present. It spoke. But not in sound. You came. Cassidy didn't blink. Heard you were pissed. You cannot fix what is broken. Try me. You are less than a whisper. Yeah, she shrugged, cracking her neck. But I'm the whisper that ruins secrets. The entity paused. Something stirred in the knot atmosphere. Why do you come? Cassidy's face hardened. The smirk faded. She looked up into that impossibly shifting form. And she told the truth. Because your tantrum is wiping out innocence. Because you think terror is justice. Because someone has to teach even a god that rage without reason is just ego. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was watching. And the being laughed. Or maybe it cried. Then let us begin. Back on Earth, no one knew Cassidy had crossed the edge of reason. The galaxy barely believed she existed. The Yalzur waited. The council prayed. But she was already deep within a god's mind. Wrestling memory from madness. And somewhere lightless stars began to shimmer again. Just barely. Cassidy had fought warlords, pirates, mercenary psychopaths, rogue AI warships. And once, accidentally, a Terran religious cult that worshipped coffee. But nothing had prepared her for this. Not the silence. Not the weight. Inside the god's consciousness, reality folded like origami. She moved, but the distance she covered wasn't physical. It was metaphysical, a journey through pain, memory, judgment, and cosmic rage. The moment she stepped forward, the god, this entity made of infinite entropy and forgotten laws, opened itself to her. Not kindly. Not with grace. It dragged her inward. There was no body to fall through. No tunnel. No light. Only impact. Cassidy slammed into a plane of not matter, breath ripped from her lungs. The air tasted like static. Her skin prickled with 1,000 impressions. Faces, battles, annihilated species, screams too large for ears. And then the images began. Epic 1, the betrayal. She saw the god as it once was. Not a god. Not yet. Just a being, a caretaker, a guardian forged by elder civilizations that now only existed as background radiation. It wasn't born of vengeance. It had been a guide, a protector of balance. The universe back then had rules, yes, but ones enforced with care. Civilizations grew in tandem. Knowledge was shared, gently like watering a garden. Even the most advanced races tread lightly, fearing the entity's quiet strength and wisdom. Until a species rose that refused balance. Cassidy saw them, not the Yalzur, not humans, something older. Incomprehensibly fast, horrifically intelligent. They evolved not through time but across time, manipulating causality itself to consume galaxies before they were even born. They saw the entity and did not kneel. They attacked. Epic 2, the fall. The caretaker was shattered, not in body but in purpose. Its creators gone, its purpose usurped, its programming fractured. And in its place grew something new, not a protector but an avenger. Cassidy winced as the next vision slammed into her. A star torn open from within. A black hole twisted into a weapon. Time itself reversed to punish a planet, so it died before it was ever seeded. The entity became legend. Then horror. The few that survived the ancient purges built religions around not waking it again. That's what the Yalzur had tripped over. And what Cassidy was walking through now was its wounded soul. Stop showing me your trauma, Cassidy grunted, staggering forward. The visions clung to her mind like oil. I've seen enough documentaries for a lifetime. The plane around her shifted. Became a sphere. Then a spiral. Then a battlefield. She now stood amidst an echo of war. A war not between armies but ideologies. Concepts bled into form. Mercy versus wrath, creation versus obliteration, logic versus feeling. And at the center of it all, a child. A human child. Cassidy froze. The god spoke again, not in words but in the dissonant, jagged sense of realization. This image is yours. Cassidy looked at the girl. Dirty face. Torn clothes. Wide, defiant eyes. She remembered now. She was 10. The war on Mars. Her colony broken by a rogue AI. She'd stood over her brother's body holding a rusted pipe. No help. No heroes. No future. Just rage. And she had survived. Not because she was strong, but because she refused to die. Cassidy exhaled, trembling. You're showing me. You understand. No, she growled. I remember. There's a difference. The scene shattered. Cassidy found herself standing atop a jagged memory shard, a massive crystalline plateau stretching into infinity, each layer below her a judgment. Billions of them. The god didn't kill randomly. It remembered every infraction, every transgression, every cosmic insult. And it held receipts. You're not just angry, Cassidy said quietly. You're grieving. The god didn't reply. but the air trembled with unspoken agreement. "Okay," she said, adjusting the straps on her pressure suit. "I'm not here to hug this out. But I get it. You were betrayed. Again. First by those ancient assholes, then by the Yalzur. They knew better. They were scared. Fear is not permission." Cassidy cracked her knuckles. "Neither is vengeance." The silence that followed wasn't passive. It was confrontational. The environment began to twist again, pulling her toward what felt like a final chamber. A trial. The judgment spire. It wasn't a place. It was a moment. But Cassidy felt herself rise along an invisible tower, as if each step weighed her soul. She emerged into a throne room sculpted from memory. Every species the god had ever interacted with formed the walls, flickering, uncertain, as if deciding whether to be angry, grateful, or terrified. And on the throne sat it, the god's avatar. No longer formless. It had taken her shape. Cassidy looked into the face of herself, but built of black glass and rage, eyes glowing with entropy. "Cute trick," she muttered. "But I've already killed myself metaphorically at least 3 times. The avatar rose. "You speak for the species. I don't speak for anyone. I was hired to stop you. Then fight." The god did not mean physically. It meant morally. Cassidy stepped forward. Her boots echoed though there was no floor. "You're scared," she said. "Terrified of being forgotten. Of being misused. You punish because that's all you think you have left." The god tilted its head. The air shook. "And you human? What have you lost?" Cassidy swallowed hard. "Everything." She didn't say it dramatically. Didn't shout. "I lost a brother to AI. Parents to a Terran resource riot. Half my soul to mercenary life. The other half when I realized nobody's coming to save anyone unless we decide to do it ourselves." The avatar blinked. "And still you defy?" "I'm not here to win. I'm here to change your mind." The ground vanished. The universe inverted. Cassidy fell. But not down. She fell into the god. And in that final moment before Section 2 ends, she understood. This wasn't a mission. This was a therapy session, with a cosmic force that had forgotten how to forgive. And Cassidy Reese was about to make the universe's angriest god confront its own damn trauma. One memory at a time. Cassidy didn't hit the ground. Because there was no ground to hit. She was still falling, or rising. It was impossible to tell in this twisted metaphysical non-space, where the laws of gravity and logic weren't just broken but laughed at and fed to black holes for sport. But she was falling. Into the god. Not into its body. Into its mind. And it was fighting back. "You don't get to look inside me," it thundered, not in sound but in raw emotional force. "I'm not yours to fix." Cassidy clenched her jaw as wave after wave of disorienting emotions slammed into her. Regret. Vengeance. A sadness so deep it bent stars. She wasn't drowning in water. She was drowning in grief weaponized by cosmic scale. And yet she stayed upright. She answered. "You didn't bring me here to kill me. You didn't annihilate me like the Yalzur. So yeah, I get to look." She landed in what felt like a memory, though the sky was made of shifting code and the ground was a tapestry of extinct species woven into a cosmic scroll. Around her, ruins. Massive, glistening towers. Collapsed. Statues of strange creatures she couldn't name, shattered. A black sun bled light in the sky, and from it descended, herself. Again. The god's avatar still wearing her face. Only now it was clad in armor made of burned languages and orbital debris. It drew a blade from its own rib. Cassidy didn't flinch. "You think this is a metaphor?" she said, stepping forward. "You think I don't understand pain?" The avatar raised its sword. Cassidy didn't draw anything. She walked. No shield. No armor. No defense. Because Cassidy Reese had learned long ago, when someone's lashing out in pain, the dumbest thing you can do is hit back. So she let the avatar swing. It was fast. Too fast. The blade moved like thought, splitting atoms, cutting quantum uncertainty. A strike from it should have unmade her on a subatomic level. Instead, the blade stopped an inch from her throat. Because she didn't flinch. And because the god hesitated. Cassidy stared into her own face, distorted by eons of rage and sorrow. "You don't want to kill me," she said softly. "You want me to understand." The sword evaporated. The avatar sat down. And began to cry. Not tears. Not human style. No, this was celestial weeping. Stars dimmed. Solar winds halted. Comet trails reversed course. The universe paused to let a god sob in peace. And Cassidy sat beside it. Not in victory. But in shared defeat. After a long moment, the god spoke again, clearer now. Why do you stay? I've asked myself that a dozen times. You could have left. I would not have stopped you. Cassidy sighed. Because you didn't just want a representative. Or an apology. You wanted an answer to a question you didn't even know you were asking. The god tilted its head. Curious. And what is that question, human? She looked out across the starless sky of this memory. What does survival mean, when you've outlived love, purpose, and peace? The god said nothing. Because it had no answer. But Cassidy wasn't done. You weren't made to destroy. You were made to protect balance. And every time something tipped that balance, you got hurt. And when the pain became too much, you stopped waiting. She turned toward the avatar. And started punishing. The god flinched. Cassidy leaned forward. That's what you're really afraid of, isn't it? That you became the very thing you were built to prevent. The silence cracked. Literally. A fault line ripped through the dream realm, and Cassidy saw glimpses, raw, horrifying glimpses, of what the god had done over the centuries. Entire civilizations snuffed out before they invented space travel. Stars reversed in time to unbirth enemy species. Peaceful negotiations ended by reality bending to erase only one side of the table. The god had tried to protect the universe. But eventually, it had decided the best way to do that was to remove the things that could break it. Cassidy turned away. This ends with you, not them. Explain. You want to fix it? You start with the one thing nobody's had the guts to tell you in a million years. She paused. Let the moment weigh. You're wrong. Thunder boomed in a language older than light. I'm never wrong. Cassidy stood up. You are. Hubris. No. Humility. I'm a species that invented nukes before unified government. I come from a race that built AI death engines because it sounded profitable. I've made mistakes bigger than galaxies. And guess what? She smiled, cold and tired. I survived those too. The dreamscape began to tear. The false sky peeled open. And Cassidy found herself standing once again in the present, hovering inside the god's neural field, body sweating, suit failing, lungs burning. But still alive. Still standing. And not alone. The Yalzur High Council's psychic anchor was open on her comms channel. They'd been monitoring everything. Cassidy Reese, came the voice of High Chancellor Gall. Did you win? No. She looked up, the god now hovering in space before her. A moon-sized construct of light, entropy, and painful memory. But I made it listen. Behind her, the remnants of the Yalzur battle fleets hovered silently. Weapons lowered. Behind them, more ships, their allies. Once poised to unleash dimensional torpedoes. Now waiting. Watching. The god did not destroy them. It did not retreat either. It simply watched. Because for the first time in millennia, it was thinking. And Cassidy? She exhaled. Took off her helmet. Let vacuum flirt with the edges of her life. Then grinned. Because when she stared into that terrifying ancient force, she saw confusion. And maybe hope. Cassidy floated in silence, the god's cosmic face gazing into hers. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. It simply existed, impossibly vast, impossibly still, its attention fixed entirely on the lone human who had dared to call it wrong. Behind her, 1,000 ships waited for judgment. Alien fleets from 10 systems. Civilizations once locked in fear of the ancient force before them, now pausing. Not because the god had willed it, but because a human had made it think. Cassidy's suit beeped a low oxygen warning. Still not killing me, she said aloud, lips cracking with dryness. That's progress. Why did you stay? The god's voice shook solar winds. You came to fix what they broke. Yet you reached into me instead. What? Cassidy coughed, every breath ragged. Her ship's auto-retrieval system was dead, burned out by the proximity to godhood. She was a drifting speck. But she was still the loudest voice in the galaxy. I stayed, she rasped, because I saw the mistake they made. And I've made that same mistake. Pause. You don't fix a system by just replacing broken parts. You fix it by knowing why it broke in the first place. The space god seemed to withdraw inward like a massive data coil retracting. Colors shifted across its shimmering construct, reds of fury, blues of regret, flickering gold of ancient command lines. And then, surprisingly, a fragment of its form separated. A small piece, no larger than a shuttle, floated toward Cassidy. She tensed, ready for the end. But the shard paused before her and morphed. A smooth sphere, silver-black, like a miniature planet reflecting her face in ripples. I cannot rewrite my history. But perhaps I can observe a different future. You may choose where this begins. Cassidy blinked. You're giving me command? No. I'm giving you a seed. If mercy can be taught, then let it begin with a deathless ending. Behind her the alien fleets braced. Because suddenly they understood. The god was offering clemency. But not a gift. Not forgiveness. A test. Cassidy opened comms to the fleet. This is human Cadet Reese. I've secured an agreement. No retaliation. No collapse. No judgment, today. Confusion flared across the commnet. What the hell does that mean? Asked the Yalzur chancellor. You're saying we just leave? Cassidy looked up at the god. And smiled. No. I'm saying we walk away, and let the galaxy talk about why. The space god, once known by a name now unpronounceable, feared as a myth used to discipline warlords and silence dissidents, withdrew. Not defeated. Not banished. But changed. It spiraled outward into the stars in a cascade of collapsing probabilities and subtle distortions. No planetary destruction. No singularity burst. It simply left. And in its absence, something else appeared. A calm. For weeks, nothing was said publicly. Then stories leaked. Of a human who walked into Godfire and returned. Of a war that didn't happen because someone listened. Of a protocol, never official but known now by whispers across the cosmos. The human mercy doctrine. We don't destroy you when we win. We don't enslave. We leave one. So every system, every star, every species remembers. The doctrine spread fast. Not through threats or treaties. But fear. Because if humans had convinced a cosmic god to stand down, what could they do to mere empires? The name Cassidy Reese became a myth among soldiers and diplomats alike. In backwater bars, alien mercs drank to her. In Senate halls of the Ark-Earth Coalition, her name was banned. On pirate vessels, it was carved into hulls as a silent prayer. One human. One god. One warning. Cassidy never returned to Earth. She didn't need to. She became something else. Her last message was broadcast once from the orbital shell of a dead world, recorded on a fragment of a god's memory. We don't conquer. We don't erase. But if you make us fight, we leave one of you alive. So you can warn the rest. And from that day forward, galactic civilizations tracked every human deployment. Because where one human went, peace followed. Or legend. End of story. If you enjoyed this journey across galaxies, ancient gods, and unbreakable human spirit, subscribe to the Void Narratives for more epic sci-fi tales where humanity always brings the storm. More stories are already on their way, and they hit harder than Starfire. You said.